buying time, killing people next in line. Lower classes, social slime, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force of air. Fuck them back, it's only for they bomb. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one thinks gun. Trees, laugh to your face, fight and die, cause God forgives. Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower classes, social side, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. See the shit, force a bear. Fuck them back, that's only fair. They bomb, they shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one thinks gun. Trees, laugh to your face, fight and die, cause God forgives. Yeah. Coming back around again.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Ron Stevens. This show is called Game On. You are listening on UCY.TV. It is noon, April the 24th, 2016. And it's actually not a bad day out today so far. Damn cold last night, but much better today. Anyways, what are we going to talk about today? I think I'm going to start. Right here today. I think the first thing I'm going to do is stick the Walter Cronkite video into the chat. I know most of you have already seen it. Some may not have seen it. If you haven't seen it, then you can go to my blog. You can go to my blog at CanadianTruths.wordpress.com and just punch in Walter Cronkite, and it will pop up. Now, Walter Cronkite's kind of important because Walter Cronkite was the name in news that people could trust. The guy was on air forever. And but he was also a World Federalist, which he didn't bring up while he was on the news. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about the World Federalists a little bit. We'll see where we go from there. But Walter Cronkite was a member of the World Federalists. Now, the World Federalists, if you look at it, it's kind of a parallel group with the UN. Everything coming from the World Federalist movement is also it parallels with the United Nations. Okay, so I don't know how many people know of the World Federalist. Everybody needs to know of the World Federalist, because what I'm trying to explain to people is we are in World War III, and we have been. We've been in World War III really since before World War I, because World War I failed in its mission, and the mission of World War I was to create the League of Nations later, and give Israel a state, the state of Israel. Well, World War I failed its mission because the American people still had a sense of history, knew why they fought the War of Independence, and had no intention of giving up any of their sovereignty. And so the League of Nations was not signed up by the American people or their so-called government at the time. And so it failed, and Israel didn't like the location offered to it. The Zionists didn't like the location. They wanted Palestine. So we have World War II, and that mission was successful with the creation of the United Nations and the State of Israel. And World War III started with, which is a psychological and spiritual war, and it's been raging ever since. And so the thing I want to attach here is that the United Nations puts itself off as this caring, wonderful group who cares about environment, who cares about your health, who cares about your banking system, just freaking well, just cares a lot about you. But it parallels itself off the World Federalists. So basically, the guys that were running the World Federalists basically is where, they pushed for the United Nations. And the sad part is, in order for them to get the United Nations and the State of Israel, I don't have the exact number, but I believe it was hundreds of millions of people were killed in the process. That's how sick these SOBs are. They're chasing the final empire, and they're willing to kill however many it takes to get their goal. And they've proven themselves over and over and over again. So this idea that I call it black and white, call it whatever you want to call it, but call it good and evil. But the evil upon this earth has been having its way for way, way, way too long. And there's an old saying, let no man deceive you. Well, we have been mightily deceived, and people are finally starting to catch on to that they were deceived. And our spirits have been captured. And we have to break those chains. And we have to go get back what is supposed to be ours, which is dominion. They stole it from us, and we need to go get it back. Now, they've killed, we know that they don't care about life, or at least anyone else's life. They've proved that through the killing of millions of people, hundreds of millions of people, and now they've used an environment as their new mechanism, psychological, spiritual war, to get us to succumb to what they want now. What they want now is they weren't happy killing hundreds of millions of people to get their goal of the UN and Israel. Now they're blaming everybody for the problems on the earth, so to speak. And now they want to kill most of you because you are a virus upon the earth. And so be careful when you go to take your vaccination. I don't think there's too many people that listen to this show would allow vaccination. Needle be stuck in their arm. Hello. My good friend Art just walked in. So hello, Art. I haven't seen you for a bit. You banged your head on something. On what?
A tap.
Oh, I'm trying. My head's just actually getting down again. Excuse me, audience, but we're talking bumps on the head here. I cracked my head up there at Paul's when we were doing something on a cupboard door or something. My head, the bumps just finally starting to go away. Anyways, back to the show after that short interruption. So we're going to play with the World Federalist Association. Now, there's another, if you live in Canada, I know it's called the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, the FMC or FCM, whichever. And that is basically spawned off of this World Federalist movement as well. Okay, and I think it was created way back in the late 1900s, not late 1900s, like 1919, early 20s. And it was the World Federalist Movement, but it was called the Federation of Municipal Councils, I think it's called, FMC. And it also is a driver of this world government nonsense. So this has been going on a long, long time. Anyways, the World Federalist Movement is a global citizens movement, apparently, that advocates the establishment of a global federal system of strengthened and accountable global institutions with constitutional plenary power, with a division of international authority among separate global agencies. Now, that sounds a whole hell of a lot like the United Nations. The organization was created in 1947 by those concerned that the structure of the United Nations was too similar to the League of Nations, which had failed to prevent World War II. It didn't fail to prevent World War. It would, if the League of Nations had been accepted by the United States, there would have not been a World War II. Okay, World War II came because the United Nations, or the United States, did not sign on to, or the American people did not sign on to the League of Nations. Okay, had way back at World War I, America signed on to the League of Nations, we would already have our world government now, which we're basically under anyways. Okay, so yeah, it failed, so they had to start a new war, and Wilson explained that to the American people as he begged them to sign on to the League of Nations. But they were in no mood to give up any of their sovereignty, nor should they be in any mood to give up any sovereignty today, although they have given up most of their sovereignty, as every other nation, over the United Nations and their multiple organizations. But it was also Wilson that signed America onto the Fed. So trust your presidents, not really. You can't trust any of these guys. Anyways, both being loosely structured associations of sovereign nation states with few autonomous powers. The WFM International Secretariat is based in, guess where? New York. Guess where? Across from the United Nations headquarters, and has member and associate organizations around the world. The movement has had special consultative status with the United Nations Economic and Social Council since 1970, and is affiliated with the UN Department of Public Information, and a current board member of the Conference of Non-Governmental Organizations. It currently counts 30 to 50,000 supporters. Now, in the aftermath of World Wars I and II, activists around the world were forming organizations bent on creating a new world order that could prevent another global war. The Campaign for World Government, the first World Federalist Organization, was founded in 1937 by two famous feminists, pacifists and female suffragists. So Rosika Schwimmer and Lola Maverick Lloyd, they were the ones that founded this movement in 1937, 1938. The Federal Union was organized in the United Kingdom. In the U.S. Federal Union, now the Association to Unite the Democracies, excuse me, I can't speak today. And so the Association to Unite Democracies, okay, and what is America spreading across the world? Democracy, okay, with bombs. But we will make you a democracy whether you like it or not. And so we'll bomb you into submission, which comes back to Warburg at the 1950 Senate hearings. We will have world government by consent or by conquest. So the Association to Unite the Democracies was established in 1939, calling for a federation of the Atlantic democracies. The Swiss International, was created in Geneva in 1940. During World War II, anti-fascist resistance movements shared and circulated copies of Altiero Spinelli's plan for the European Federation. That's the EU. That's the European Union. Okay. In 1945, the committee to frame a world constitution convened at the University of Chicago and drafted Constitution for the World. In 1947, 5 small World Federalist organizations came together in North Carolina and agreed to merge as the United World Federalists. These 5 groups had the previous year met with representatives of 15 other Montreux to discuss creating a worldwide Federalist organization. It was 1 year later, in 1947, also in Montreux, that more than 51 organizations from 24 countries came together at the Conference of the World Movement for World Federal Government. The conference concluded with the Montreux Declaration. By its second Congress in 1948, Luxembourg, the movement consisted of 150,000 members, 19 nationalists, and 50 members and affiliated organizations. The 350 participants in the Congress laid the groundwork for an association of parliamentarians for the world government, which came into being in 1951. Federalists had hoped that these anticipated UN Review Conference under Article 109 of the UN Charter in 1955 would move the UN further to the direction of a world federal system. Unfortunately, the lack of political will dissipated any interest in such a conference. Around 1965, however, the movement had established offices near the United Nations with American Federalist Mary McVitie as the movement's UN observer and advocate. Federalists in this period focused on amendments to the United Nations Charter as a way forward. Most involved reforms to institutions such as a more representative Security Council, World Court with compulsory jurisdiction and judicial review authority, and a democratically elected General Assembly or a World Parliament. Now, the UNPA is the United Nations Parliamentary Assembly. Now, if you go to the UNPA, you will find, especially here in Canada, you will find members from every party are involved in this. A huge number of senators are involved in this. Our happy, I don't even know how you describe our prime minister right now. He's a feminist. He's a promoter of Islam. He's a promoter of transgender. So I'm not sure what this guy is. He loves the gay pride parade. So we have I don't know. I mean, it's a mess. So anyways, you may see the Prime Minister of Canada in either or bathroom, being a feminist and all and being pro-transgender. So you may see this fairly tall guy who's kind of looks like a puppet. Maybe he has a burqa on. In a ladies' washroom. It could be the Prime Minister of Canada. I'm just giving you a heads up on that. Could be him. This is the leader of our nation, eh? I mean, come on, give me a freaking break. This has to bust up soon. I mean, it's over the top now. The Federalists in this period. Where was I here? Yes, Federalists proposed a number of new institutions such as the Commission on Sustainable Development. Okay, that's the Federalists. Okay, development, an International Development Authority, a Standing Peacekeeping Corps, and an International Criminal Court. This is all what you find in the United Nations. The Institute for Global Policy, founded in 1983 by the World Federalist Movement, is a research and policy institute dedicated to the promotion of human security, international justice, prevention of arms conflict, and the protection of civilians. The Institute emphasizes the democratization of international and regional organizations and the development of global application of international law, Most recently, the World Federalist has been at the forefront of advocating for NGO access to international conferences and meetings. This is all the identical things that you read from the United Nations. Now, member organizations, the World Federalist is composed of autonomous national and regional organizations organized by individual supporters in their respective countries and applying to the governing council. And for membership, organizations are asked to endorse the WFM statement of purpose and to demonstrate a capacity to contribute to the enhancement of public and political support for the movement's goals. The World Federalist Movement has member organizations and associated organizations around the world, including Citizens for Global Solutions, Union of European Federalists, World Federalist Movement Canada, the Universal Party, and the World Federalist Movement of Japan. Others include Democratic World Federalists, One World Trust, and Committee for Democratic UN. And the Ugandan World Federalists, the WFM umbrella organization also includes a coalition for the International Criminal Court. So I don't know what the statement of purpose is. I may have read this. I did read this. Statutes of the World Federalist Movement Institute for Global Policy is adopted at the 6th Congress, London, 1954, and amended at the 8th Congress, Stockport, Cheshire, 1956, the Petersburg Conference, 1959, 12th Conference, San Francisco, 13th Congress, Oslo, Emergency Congress, Elsinore, in 68, 14th in Ottawa, Canada, 1970, 15th Congress, Brussels, 1972, 16th Congress, New Delhi, 18th Congress, Tokyo, Special Congress, London, 20th Congress, Philadelphia, 21st Congress, I can't even say that, and the 22nd Congress in San Francisco in 1995, and the 25th Congress in Geneva in 2007. Now, I don't know, I never heard any of this on my TV set. I never read any of this stuff in my newspapers. But then you're not supposed to know about any of this stuff. Anyways, the preamble says, as members of the World Federalist Movement, we affirm our determination to exercise our rights and responsibilities as citizens of the whole world in order to achieve the high purposes of the United Nations. Our planet is in crisis, suffering grave problems, unable to be managed by nations acting separately in a non-governed world. It has become urgent for the world's people and governments to join in achieving a new level of global solidarity, such as can only be sustained by a commitment to the planet as a genuine community. We make that commitment and call on our fellow citizens and governments to do the same. As World Federalists, we view the world as only one society embracing all of humanity in all its diversity. We affirm that the ideals and principles of the community life, which are basic to civilized existence, can and must be applied into international relations. To this end, we call for urgent progress in developing democratic world institutions of law by which the world's people and nations can govern their relations to assure a peaceful, just, and ecologically sustainable world community. Number 4, these institutions must have actual and sufficient authority to make and enforce law in their given jurisdiction according with the basic federalist principle of subsidiary, which is the division of political authority and jurisdiction between different levels of government and the solving of problems at the level at which they occur. In general, at the most local level possible. For this is the essence of world federalism, to seek to invest legal and political authority in world institutions to deal with problems which can only be treated adequately at the global level, while affirming the sovereignty of the nation state in matters which are essentially internal. But this is the beauty of it, right? They can deem anything to be a global problem, okay, which takes away your sovereignty to deal with it. All of the nations, all of them, have signed on to this crap. Either through the World Federalists or through the United Nations, without the consent of the people. They've signed all kinds of treaties and that. The lawyers are making a killing on this, okay, writing all this legalese and all this international crap, all this international green crap, ecology crap, which is going to take away everything you thought belonged to you or your nation and move it over to a world government that you don't know anything about and have no idea how this even happened, most people. Because nobody's been telling anybody, which is deception, which of course is fraud. Our objective is to have not only governments, but individuals recognize their obligation to uphold and affirm world law through allegiance to these institutions. It is the citizen who is finally the rightful source and subject of the authority of the world law. Individuals, whether heads of government or ordinary citizens, must be accountable under due process of world law for crimes against humanity. Ooh. Which means basically that they can pull your ass out of anywhere, anytime, and take you to a world court where you will never be heard from or seen again. In our work for World Federation, we are dedicated especially to work for understanding the amity among the world's cultures and political ideologies, to end the arms race and the elimination of all weapons of mass destruction, and end to the use and threat of use of military force, respect for universal human rights and freedoms, including the right of all to the requirements of a dignified life, and the freedom for all to responsibly express their beliefs, unless, of course, your beliefs go against their beliefs, at which point they will haul you out of wherever you are and take you to a world court and send you off to the Soil and Green Factory or a slave camp somewhere. History does tend to repeat itself because the same assholes have been controlling this for way too long. Equitable participation of all in the global economy and global decisions which affect their lives. Equitable distribution of world resources between rich and poor countries in order to eradicate poverty, disease, and illiteracy. Now, this equitable distribution of world resources, this is what's going on now, which we really got to pay attention to, and that's the guaranteed income. Okay, the idea is all of the resources on the planet goes into the hands of a small group of people. Call it the World Federalists, call it the United Nations, call it whatever the hell you want to call it, because these psychopaths are distributed throughout all of these institutions and groups. And they will decide what is adequate, and that is universal human rights. Okay, the rights of those who came from apes. These are your rights as a human being, as an animal. We, the men who have dominion over everything on the planet, will adequately distribute what we feel is adequate to you when we feel like it. And that's the problem, and it has to be stopped. Any nation that would turn over its resources to a fictional entity, be it the World Federalists or the United Nations, which is nothing more. The United Nations, as far as I know, is just a tax-exempt foundation. The United Nations does not pay tax. Okay, if I contract with the United Nations to put in some smart meters in Poland or something, and I've read that actual document before, then I, the contractor, am not to charge tax because the United Nations is tax exempt, which means it's sovereign. Okay, which means it's your world government. So, anyways, let me see, where are we at here? the protection of our common environment and the preservation of the ecosystem for the succeeding generations. Now, doesn't that just sound like the Grohl-Brundtland report? Doesn't that sound like sustainable development? And this is the World Federalist Papers. And the emergence of a global ethos and consciousness of humanity as one community and of every person as a citizen of one world. Now, I don't want to preach violence, but this has to be stopped. You see, your so-called elected officials do not represent you. They have never represented you. Okay, their oath is to the state. They are employees of the state. They do the bidding of the state. You don't even come into play here. You get to play this stupid let's vote game, but again, you can't vote. Okay, I keep saying this. It's impossible for you to vote because only the legal person can vote, and the legal person is not you. Okay, you are an agent of the legal person, therefore you vote in proxy. Therefore, your vote is the vote of the legal entity, which is owned by the state. Okay, so you never voted. You will never vote unless we get rid of this system. So all of these things, this idea that your nation is over here, and they say that they're there for your benefit. The nation is there to protect you. Why? We have an army to protect you. And we'll educate you, and we'll look after your health care and all of that stuff. This same group of liars is over here writing treaties and agreements with this international body of which they set up. They set it up. And that is deception. That is a breach of trust. That is treason. So Jefferson, I guess it was, sent something to the effect that we have to, when these become treasonous or they stop representing the people, then it's the right of the people. In fact, it's the duty of the people to remove these clowns. So while I would like to see this fixed without violence, we're going to have to step up to the plate, and we're going to have to get in their faces. And we're going to have to explain to them in no uncertain terms that we get it. And we are no longer going to put up with it, okay? So move aside. We, the people, are taken over because these are our lands, because that's where our feet are. That's possession. So we have to deal with this, and we better start dealing with it soon. Number 7, in the service of our goals, we support transnational tendencies, which leads toward a more mature world legal order and world community. Now, they say a legal order, and we all know that legal is the opposite of law. Legal system is a system which deceives and enslaves. Law cuts the chains and offers freedom. So that's what I'm saying. The lawyers are making a killing out of this. They're licking their lips. Okay? They're writing more shit than you can shake a stick at. I mean, where was that? I don't know. It was Kitchener, Cambridge, somewhere. I don't even know. Maybe Toronto. I don't remember where it was. But the kids can't play with chalk on the sidewalk. Now, the kids can put up with transgenders hanging out in the washroom, but the kids can't sit out on the sidewalk and draw pretty little pictures of flowers or cars or whatever the kids are up to that day. That will not be tolerated. But transgenders running around in children's washrooms will be tolerated. Now, the reason I put that clip of Walter Cronkite in there at the beginning of this show is because Walter Cronkite says that in that video that he is proud, and this is the Norman Cousins World Federalist Award that Cronkite is accepting. And in that acceptance speech, he says how proud he is to sit at the side of Satan. And then Hillary Clinton at the end there, somewhere in there, congratulates Walter Cronkite for his good works. So when I say we live where it's good and evil, black and white, the United Nations and all of these can only be described as satanic organizations. And the legal system, right? The legal system, which is an adversarial system, if you look at adversary, you will find the word Satan. So they're using all their good language mumbo jumbo because they know how to pull at the heartstrings to deceive everyone into coming into their fold. What we want to do is we want to crush it. And we better get on that bandwagon pretty damn fast. Let's see here. Where are we here? The important functions of work of the United Nations system are working at the same time to make it more democratic, reliable, and effective. Respect for international law, as well as further development through such existing mechanisms as state ratification of treaties and conventions, and the development of associations and or federations for regional and functional purposes. We recognize that the building of a world community, one based on fundamental justice and an appreciation of differences, is the greatest intellectual, moral, and political challenge of our time. It calls on each of us to examine our beliefs and priorities and to express in our personal way our commitment to global change. There's nothing moral about these groups. There's nothing moral about them because it's all being put together by the legal lawyers, okay? And legalization, I think that's the term, says it is amoral. It's an amoral system. So for them to throw in the word moral, pushing it. But then they don't care what they say. They're deceivers. They will say whatever they need to say to get in your head that they are the good guys, when in fact they're the exact opposite. Anyways, number 9, change requires the organized will and intelligence of many individuals, and each person has something positive and vital to contribute to the process of change. Believing that by working together we can achieve more than by working separately, we unite our efforts through the World Federalist Movement and adopt hereby this Constitution. A membership shall be open, irrespective of race, color, nationality, religion, class, or sex, to any individual, organization, or group subscribing to the aims, statutes, and bylaws of the World Federalist Movement. As is hereby provided, membership shall be of the following categories. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of shit here. I'm not going to go through. Executive committees, officers, honorary officers, ex officio members, secretariats, finances, bylaws, statutes, amendments, dissolution, and so on and so forth. And that's the statutes of the World Federalists, which sounds identical to those of the United Nations. Now, if we go back up here to, where is this? We go over here to Rosika Schwimmer, who was one of the founders of this campaign for world government. We find out that, let me see, she's a Hungarian-born pacifist, feminist, and female suffragist. She was one of the World Federalists who served as one of the world's first female ambassadors to Hungary and Switzerland. She was born to a Jewish family in Budapest. And we go through here with her stuff. I'm going to pop some of this into the chat, I guess. There's a lot of links in here. Let's see here. In 1897, she founded the Hungarian Feminist Association, helped to fund the Hungarian National Council of Women, later organized the first women's trade union in Hungary, and was a board member of the Hungarian Peace Society. In 1909, the Ministry of Interior appointed her to the governing board of child welfare. In 1913, she became a corresponding secretary of the International Women's Suffragette Alliance. Let's see. When World War I broke out, she could not return home and began to agitate for the end of hostilities. In 1914, she toured the U.S. to demand President Woodrow Wilson form a neutral conference to end the war. In 1915, she took part in the formation of the Women's Peace Party at the International Congress of Women. 1915, The Hague, the Netherlands. She proposed for a neutral conference for continuous mediation between the governments of the belligerents. Later that year, she gained the support of Henry Ford, who chartered a peace ship to Stockholm. I didn't know that. Now, Ford was one of these tax-exempt foundations, of which, when the Reece Commission and Norman Dodd were running around on the Reece Commission trying to figure out what these tax-exempt foundations were up to, and talking to one of the Ford Foundation members, they said, well, that's simple. We're charged with Sovietizing America. Okay? Have you driven a Ford lately? So I don't know what chartered a peace ship. I don't know what this peace ship thing is. Let's see. The peace ship was the common name for the ocean liner Oscar II, in which the American industrial Henry Ford organized and launched his 1915 amateur peace mission to Europe. Ford chartered the Oscar II and invited prominent peace activists to join him. He hoped to create enough publicity to prompt the belligerent nations to convene a peace conference and mediate the end to World War. But the mission was widely mocked by the press, which referred to Oscar II as the Ship of Fools, as well as the peace ship, infringing between the activists, mockery by the press contingent aboard, and an outbreak in influenza marred the voyage. 4 days after Oscar II arrived in Norway, a beleaguered and physically ill Ford abandoned the mission and returned to the United States. The peace mission was unsuccessful and reinforced Ford's reputation as a supporter of unusual causes. Okay? What is his unusual causes? Sovietization of America. Anyways, this is interesting to me. I mean, you guys, whatever, but I'm finding this very interesting. Henry Ford and the peace ship. And I wasn't taught any of this shit in school that I recall. None of it. In early 1915, Henry Ford began to publicly express pacifist sentiment and denounce the ongoing war in Europe. Later in the year, American peace activist Louis Lochner and Hungarian journalist Schwimner approached Ford, now commonly recognized as a recognized pacifist, with a proposal to launch an amateur diplomatic mission to Europe to broker an end to World War. Schwimner claimed to possess diplomatic correspondence that proved that the European powers were willing to negotiate an outright fabrication. Nevertheless, Ford agreed to finance a peace campaign. Henry Ford initially sought President Woodrow Wilson's endorsement of his diplomatic undertaking. Ford and Lochner secured a meeting with Wilson at the White House and proposed that Wilson officially commission Ford's mission to Europe. Although Wilson was sympathetic to Ford's aims, he declined the offer on the ground that the venture was most unlikely to succeed. Disappointed by President's response, Ford told Lochner that Wilson was a small man. Well, he was a small man who did what he was told to do. He allowed the Fed to be created. He pushed like hell for the League of Nations. He's a small man, all right, and a damn dangerous man. Ford was undeterred, however, by Wilson's refusal to endorse the expedition and planned it as a private delegation to Europe. On November 24th, 1915, he announced to a New York press conference that he had chartered the ocean liner Oscar II for a diplomatic mission to Europe and invited the most prominent pacifists of the age to join him. Among those invited were Jane Addams, William Jennings Bryan, Thomas Edison, and John Wanamaker. Adams, Bryan, Edison, and Wanamaker all declined. However, a number of noted peace activists did join the voyage, among them suffragette, I can't say that name, and publisher S.S. McClure. Also aboard the ship were more than 40 reporters and Ford's friend and Reverend Samuel Marquis. So, anyways, they took off. Let's see, infighting among the delegates plagued the tour, but for much of the journey across the Atlantic, and particularly quarreled over the proper response to send to the media after they received news from President Wilson's 7th of December address to Congress, which he called for considerable increases in the United States Army and Navy. The majority of delegates signed a resolution that denounced Wilson's policy of military preparedness, although a substantial minority refused to sign the resolution on the ground that it was unpatriotic. After the pro-Wilson minority threatened to abandon the mission upon landing in Europe, the two factions mutually denounced each other. Yada, yada, yada. Initially, the press response to the peace ship was respectable. The New York Times warned that an immediate peace would entail German possession of Belgium and part of France, but concluded that Ford's plan would do as little harm as good. Some newspapers applauded Ford's effort. The New York Herald asserted that we need more Fords, more peace talks, and less indifference to the greatest crime in the world's history. After all, Ford's most prominent invitees declined his offer of sailing to Europe. The press reaction turned negative. The Baltimore Sun noted that all the amateur efforts of altruistic and notoriety-seeking millionaires only make matters worse. Well, the New York World stated that Henry Ford says he would give all his fortune to end the war. So would many other men, but this is something that money will not do. Other papers openly mocked Ford's amateur peace campaign. The Philadelphia Record claimed that Henry Ford's mission have all gone to his head, and the Louisville Courier was even more severe, suggesting that Henry Ford carried cold cream in his head. Anyways, that's part of this stuff. So all of this stuff that's been going on for all of these years has all been to move us to a world government. Simple as that. When Hungary gained independence from Austria-Hungary in 1918, Prime Minister Milke, I can't say half of these names, appointed Schwimner to be ambassador to Switzerland. When the communists gained control of the government in 1919, she opposed them and lost her civil rights. In 1920, when Hotte's government ousted the communists, she fled to Vienna. In 1921, she settled in Chicago, where she contributed to building the foundation for future women Hungarian politics. So through all of this, and if I went through some of this yesterday, read through some of this stuff, and I'm looking for, I've got my links mixed up here now, because as I went through, well, wait a minute here. As I went through this, I started finding names like, let's see, let's see if we can find something through here. The globe, no, it's not there either. I've lost my linkages here. Okay, so it was Scooby-Dooby-Doo here. Where was, let's see here, is that it there? Nope. Okay, let's, this is a place I haven't been to. The World Federalist Movement Canada is a member organization of the World Federalist Movement, a global citizen movement dedicated to promoting institutions of world governments. As a national headquarters in Ottawa, active branches in Vancouver, Victoria, and Montreal. Since its founding in 1951, the World Federalist Canada and its predecessor organizations have been a strong advocate for the application of the principles of democratic federalism to world affairs. It advocates for strengthening international bodies and democratizing existence global institutions. The current national president of the Canadian section of the movement is former cabinet minister Honorable Warren Allman. Other well-known Canadians also served as World Federalist President of Canada. And, see, now this I didn't know. Now I'm pissed off. Okay? This is what I'm saying. The people think when the politicians are no longer in the political field, they just kind of go away. None of them go away. It's like they're at the crossroads, they sign the damn piece of paper, and they are bound for life to do the bidding of these extremely screwed up, evil people. So other well-known Canadians were the Honorable Flora MacDonald, the very Reverend Senator Lois M. Wilson, and the Honorable Alan Blakeney. Now, I did a story on Alan Blakeney when he died. I don't know, he died 2, 3, 4 years ago, whatever, and ripped a strip off him for being a traitor, right? So Alan Blakeney, Premier of Saskatchewan, in office from 71 to 82, monarch, Elizabeth II. If people don't understand that yet, Elizabeth II is the head of state of the so-called country. She's really the CEO of her global corporation. And our prime ministers are the CEOs of the companies under that major corporation. And Canada is a corporation. And your so-called prime minister is merely the CEO of that corporation and the head of board. Now, of course, he's an NDPer. And it doesn't say anywhere here in his bio I don't see anything in here in his bio hooking him to the World Federalist Organization. This is the problem. We've got all kinds of leaders and all kinds of newspaper guys and everything going to these Bilderberg meetings. You know, it's all treason. It's all deception. It's all fraud. You know, it's all fraud. Let's see what we got here. Premier Blakeney's government practiced state-led economic intervention in the economy. The farmers were a high priority as globalization began transforming agriculture, weakening the traditional family farm through consolidation mechanism and corporatization. The NDP promised to revitalize rural Saskatchewan, and Blakely introduced programs to stabilize corn prices, retain transportation links, yada, yada, yada. His government created a crown. Are you off? Okay, have fun. His government created a crown corporation in the potash industry in an attempt to further diversify the province's agrarian economy and threatened exploration of private potash mines within the province. Pointed out that the sums paid for these three mines were slightly in excess of their appraised book value. However, the mere threat of expropriation carried a political firestorm that involved even the U.S. government. Blakeney also created a state-owned oil and gas corporation, Saskatchewan Oil, to handle exploration and production, yada, 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 yada. Played an important role in the federal-provincial negotiations that led to the 1982 patriation of the Canadian Constitution. Okay, so what a great guy. Let's see. So he died in 2011. So I guess that's how long ago I ripped the strip off this guy. Federal NDP Jack Layton dedicated the rest of his federal election campaign to Blakeney, who died about halfway through the campaign. About 600 people attended his memorial, including federal NDP leaders Jack Layton, Ed Broadbent, former provincial premier Roy Romanow, Peter Lougheed, Ed Shriver, Bill Davis, and Bob Ray. These are all treasonous dogs, okay? Every single one of them. But I don't see no mention in here about Blakeney being part of the World Federalist movement. Not under his bio, it ain't there. Okay, so let's see if we can get Flora MacDonald to pop up. Flora MacDonald, PC, Ontario, was a Canadian politician and humanitarian, Canada's first female foreign minister, and foreign affairs. Of course, affairs means business. That's the business of the company, which the company being Canada. She was also one of the first women to vie for leadership of a major Canadian political party, the Progressive Conservatives. She became a close friend of Prime Minister Joe Clark. Joe Clark is an internationalist. I got a video of Joe Clark sitting at Berkeley in California, figuring out how to soft shoe the North American Union down our throats. And now he is off with another international organization. Just it makes you want to puke. Serving in his cabinet from 79 to 80, as well as in the cabinet of Prime Minister Brian Mulroney from 84 to 88. In her later life, she was known for her humanitarian work abroad. Well, let's see. Joe Clark at Berkeley trying to soft shoe the North American Union down our throat. Brian Mulroney, who signed us on to Agenda 21. Let's see if we can pick up Laurie here with the World Federalists. Born in Nova Scotia. Yada, yada, yada. She trained as a secretary at the Empire Business College and found work as a bank teller. After hitchhiking through Europe, she returned to Canada, became involved in politics. Let's see, yada, 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 yada. Come on, bring it up to me here. I still don't see any World Federalist in here. Minister of External Affairs, Clark and MacDonald, both moderates, became allies throughout their careers. When Clark became Prime Minister of Canada in 1979, he made MacDonald the first female Secretary of State for External Affairs, which is external business in Canadian history, and one of the first female foreign ministers anywhere in the world. During MacDonald's tenure, she had to deal with the Vietnamese boat people refugees crisis that followed the end of the Vietnam War. See this? Refugees again, okay? blow up a country and to bring in the refugees. MacDonald Immigration Minister Acne developed a plan in which the Canadian federal government would match the number of refugees sponsored by members of the general public, allowing more than 60,000 Vietnamese refugees to enter Canada. Let's see, hostage crisis in Iran, yada, yada, yada. Returned to government after politics. After losing her seat in 1988, MacDonald quit politics and devoted her time to international humanitarian work. Oh, there is a reference here to her. She served as chair of the board of Canada's International Development Research Centre from 92 to 97, was also president of the World Federalist Movement Canada. In 2003, she briefly re-entered political scene to oppose the merger of the Progressive Conservative Party and the Canadian Alliance. She died in 2015 at the age of 89. Her death was met with an outpouring of praise from figures across the political spectrum of Canada. Peter Milken, who defeated her in the and Joe Clark, and yada, yada, yada. So, sworn as a member of the Queen's Privy Council for Canada in June 1979, giving her the honorific principal or prefix, the Honourable, and the Queen's Privy Council for Canada, the Queen being the CEO of the Dominion, which is just a collection of corporations. And so she's sworn in as a member of the Queen's Privy Council. And when you become a member of the Queen's Privy Council, you take an oath of secrecy for life. You're a member for life, and you swear an oath of secrecy for life. Okay? So we know the Queen is involved in all of this shit. Okay? It's all about empire. Okay? It's all about empire. And you have these people that you pay your taxes to, that they tell you that you're their government and that they're there for your best interests, which is just a humongous freaking lie. Okay? They don't give a damn about you. It's about final empire. And this is what really rubs me bad, man. They're sticking their hands in your pocket and stealing your labor in order to move their programs forward, which are designed to destroy you. It's called an inside job, just like Cicero said in 42 BC. It's an inside job. Okay? It's treason, which is a breach of trust. If you got breach of trust, you will find treason. And we're being held as subjects. They call you citizens now, but you're still a subject. You're subject of the state. Okay? That is slavery. That is no free will. And everybody should be really, really, really ticked off about that. Now, Honorable, I'm going to just look at the rest of these guys here for a minute. Warren Almond, born 1932, a Liberal Party member. So we've got an NDPer, a Liberal, and a Conservative. That's what we've come up with so far here. We're presidents of the World Federalist Association. So this idea of politics doesn't fly, people. Okay? This is the third one that was the president of the World Federalist Association, Canada. This one's a Liberal. The one before it was a Progressive Conservative, and the one before that was an NDP. So I would just wish people would quit. I see it still. You know, everybody wanted to get rid of Harper. No sooner get rid of Harper, they want to get rid of Trudeau and want conservatives back. I mean, give your head a shake. Politics is corporate business. It is not about the representation of the people. It is corporate business. The Queen is at the apex of the legal and political systems, both corporate. Okay? They're both corporate. So none of these people represent you. They're stealing from you in order to build the final empire, which is your demise. Plain and simple. Anyways, Allman was born in Montreal and studied civil law at McGill University. If you studied at McGill University, that's where Brzezinski came out of. That's where they did mind-bending experiments. That's where they did all kinds of weird experiments on people. It's a shithole. Trust no one that comes out of McGill. In comparative law at the University of Paris. He was admitted to the Quebec bar in 1958, therefore he's a lawyer. I mean, how many bad things can this guy get involved in? What is that noise? Oh, it's a kitten. He was sworn into Privy Council in 1972 and has held 3 cabinet posts: Solicitor General, Indian Affairs and Northern Development, and the Consumer and Corporate Affairs. So that's his connection to this thing. He's currently, is he still alive? He's 83, and it says here he is currently teaching international human rights at McGill University as a visiting scholar at the Institute of Canadian Studies. Okay, so human rights is and human rights, and which makes him an internationalist, which makes him, well, the fact that he's a lawyer makes him a liar. And but this guy doesn't have any. When we go through his stuff, we don't see any. Oh yeah, here we go. External link. World Federalist Movement Canada. And you do the same thing in the United States. I mean, you go look through some of your ex politicians, and you will find the same thing. These people are in the business of causing you harm. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Okay, so here we have this Lois Moran Wilson. This is the last one here. Born Lois Freeman, was the first female moderator of the United Church of Canada, which just shows you that the churches are all involved in this shit, which if you've got a half a brain, you already know that. Especially the United Church, but all of the other churches are involved in it as well. It's all internationalization. This is the coming together of all of the churches. This is the so-called Christian churches sponsoring Muslims into Canada. Now, that makes no sense, unless, of course, you're an internationalist or a World Federalist or a UN NGO, of which all of the churches are. She was ordained United Church minister in 1965, her husband having previously been ordained a United Church minister. She served as co-director of the Ecumenical Forum for Canada and also served as president of the Canadian Council of Churches, as well as the World Council of Churches. Okay, the World Council of Churches is directly connected to the United Nations and has said that all of the churches have to mold into one. It's all about one government, one religion, and it's not based on what these, the average person sitting in a pew in a church believes that the United Nations is a entity of goodness because they've been conned by their preachers which started, as nearest I can figure, 1962. I had some documents of how the churches were infiltrating the globalist ideals into the churches through, I believe it was UNESCO in 1962. Okay, so let's see what we got here. Graduate of the University of Winnipeg, completing a Bachelor of Arts and a Master's of Divinity. She served in team ministry with her husband, United Church Pastoral Charges in Winnipeg, Thunder Bay, Hamilton, Kingston, and was a board member of the First Place Hamilton. Active in the Student Christian Movement of Canada, World Student Christian Federation, that's another international outfit. Pearson, let's see, Companion of the Order of Canada. Now, the thing about the Companion of the Order of Canada, people think that is a wonderful thing to get. Oh, look, somebody got the Order of Canada. David Suzuki has the Order of Canada. Neil Young, Order of Canada, and the list goes on and on and on. Morgenthaler was Order of Canada. I don't know if they finally kicked him out because of bad press, but why was he in there? Because he was an abortion doctor who was pushing the buttons, and it's all about depopulation, so he gets the Order of Canada. Okay, the Order of Canada is not showing you that these people are great Canadians or great so-called humanitarians or anything. They are all people who have been doing what was asked of them to coerce and deceive. Okay, so the Order of Canada is the home of the deceivers. It's not something to be proud of, people, but this is how easily people get conned by the TV sets, the newspapers, the churches, the Politico, and so on and so forth. In 1898, she was appointed to the Canadian Senate among the recommendations of John Chrétien. She served in the chamber as an independent until her retirement in 2002. Now the Canadian Senate, again, I said the UNPA, which is the United Nations Parliamentary Assembly Group, pushing for the Parliament of the United Nations, which is the world government. There is a horde of senators that are members of that UNPA group. So you wonder why the country's going in the toilet. You wonder why when you vote for somebody different, nothing different happens. Well, this is why. Okay, and I don't see a connection here with her to the World Federalists. So I don't. But anyways, she is, or was. She's 89, so these people have been working at this a long, long time. And it's amazing how long these people who are working against the people seem to live. You know, these people seem to have extremely long lives, comparatively speaking to the general public. And I don't know why that is. Maybe they're special. Okay, Citizens for Global. I'm just going to run through some of this stuff today. Citizens for Global Solutions has their roots in 1947 convention in North Carolina, when World Federalists USA merged with four similar organizations to form the United World Federalists. Membership was open to any American except persons of communist or fascist orientation, which it kills me because world government is world communism and world fascism, okay? Because fascism is, as Mussolini said, fascism should be rightfully referred to as corporatization or corporatism. Okay, and so again, it was Rockefeller said something has to take the place of government, and business seems to be the obvious entity to do it. Okay, so except persons of communist or fascist orientation. Well, that's all this thing is communist and fascist. That's what the UN is. Democratic World Federalists. I'm going to take a look at the Universal Party too, because I don't know exactly what that's about. Democratic World Federalists is a civil society organization based in San Francisco, which supports worldwide advocates, a democratic federal system of world government in order to end war and crimes against humanity and to promote a just world community and the preservation of a livable and healthful global environment through the development of enforceable world law. It is affiliated with the Coalition of Democratic World Government, Community of World Citizens, and the World Federalist Movement. Now, I can't say this enough. Enforceable world law. You know, this is exactly what they're doing right now with this, especially with the environmental law. Okay? A little country from nowhere that you never heard of proposes a law to save whatever, a beetle, a worm, whatever, it doesn't matter. And then, unbeknownst to you, the countries all agree to this. And then it becomes global law. So now the farmer here is supposed to be feeding you, wants to go. It's already happened here. I mean, farmers here can't bring their hay in because there could be a bird nesting in the field. Not necessarily there's a bird nesting in the field, but there could be a bird nesting in the field. So, you know, that's called, what do they call that? Law. But he can't take his hay off because there could be a bird or a salamander or a bug or a worm or a snake or something in that field. And this is the same thing as international law where the kids can't use chalk on the sidewalk anymore. Okay? This is the absolute tying down of the people through world law with a world court. So there's no nation, okay? It's the complete destruction of the nation state. And once you don't have a nation state, as screwed up as your nation may be, and they're all screwed up because they're all run by the legal system, wait till you're being dragged in front of a world court. And they will have these world courts in your country. They're not going to have to drag you out of your country to take you to world court. Okay, we got, I don't even know how many courts we got here now. Right, we've got administrative courts, we've got Queen's Bench courts, we've got common law courts, we've got family courts, we've got traffic courts. Don't be surprised when you get hauled up in the next 20 years into front of a world court. Under world court rules, not the rules of your nation, but the world court, where you did something that upset someone. Activists by Northern California World Federalists and Democratic World Federalists. 1949, a team including the President of the United World Federalists, Alan Cranston, and its executive director, Robert Walker, convinced the state legislature to pass the California Resolution, the first of several post-war state resolutions calling for the United States to participate in a World Constitutional Convention. In 1965, during the 20th anniversary of the drafting of the UN Charter in San Francisco, The World Congress of the World Association of World Federalists was held in San Francisco in 1983. The World Federalist Association was organized from the chapters and members of the old United World Federalists in the Northern California region, became active again and staffed office first in Oakland, then in San Francisco. In 89 through 90s, activists in Northern California supported Philadelphia 2 and its sister organization, One World, a movement and direct democracy, leading to a World Constitutional Convention through the Citizens Initiative. Since 1992, the World Federalist has published a quarterly Towards Democratic World Federation, which provides articles from leading World Federalist scholars, activist citizens, and like-minded organizations on world government-related current topics. And there's an archive there. In 1993, when the World Federalist Organization was promoting United Nations reform, the Northern California branch played a major role in organizing a hearing in San Francisco of Congressman Jim Leach's U.S. Congress Commission on improving the effectiveness of the United Nations. This took place in the green room of the War Memorial Building, where the Charter of the UN had been negotiated in 1945. In 1995, the World Federalists Northern California hosted a World Congress of the World Federalist Movement and organized an all-day forum on restructuring the United Nations. During the 1990 committee, counselors from 11 countries on 4 continents, headed by one from Northern California, produced a pamphlet of democratic world federalist principles. In 2004, 5 activists, again incorporated as a civil society educational body coming under Section 50 of the IRS Code, and with citizens from a dozen countries active in its office and or governance. It took the name Democratic World Federalists, as it attracted supporters of World Federation from throughout the United States and on 5 continents. In 2005, helped promote the launching of One World Democracy, written by 2 of its supporters. Today, over 60 years after its foundation, the World Federalist promotes a democratic world federation and addresses contemporary political problems, global problems, in a quarterly publication to outreach the media, politicians, educational institutions, libraries, and other civil organizations. Now, while all of this is going on in the background, the people who work for a living don't know much about this. They're out there waving the flag and, America, land of the free and home of the brave. Not realizing for a minute that it's all a ruse. Keep your mind busy. Keep your mind attached somewhere other than what it should be, understanding what the hell's going on in your nation. Oh, God. Anyways, here is, I've been reading through Wikipedia here, but here is a link to the Democratic World Federalists. This seems to be their homepage. Oh, God. I'm going to put this in here. People can go through and see what they got. Anyways, the Democratic World Federalists. Solving global problems. Paths to a world federation, transform the United Nations. Well, let me see here. Okay. I'm going to stick this in here. because it needs to be moved around. The people have got to get their brain wrapped around the fact that they simply do not have a government. Okay? You've never had a government. You've been used as a resource for the corporation. The corporation has made you liable for all of its debts. So it doesn't give a shit. Accountable government. What is an accountable government? They have the right to spend whatever they want, borrow whatever they want against you, your future earnings, against the resource base of which you own, and spend the money in any way they wish, be it promoting transgenderism or war or anything in between. It doesn't matter what they spend, you're on the hook for it. Does that sound like responsible government to you, or does that sound like some kind of a nasty little scam that was applied upon the people, and they've been getting away with it for this long? It has to be stopped. And it's going to get stopped. I got a most interesting call to this morning, just not long before, I don't know, 20 after 11 or whatever. I got a call from a gentleman from Toronto wanting to know about the Oath Keepers. Now, he'd been on my blog, and he had seen a video that my friend had done, or a radio show my friend used to host out of Georgia. And he did an interview with Jack McLam of the Oath Keepers. And he was quite taken with the Oath Keepers, and he was taken with Jack. And he started up Oath Keepers Canada, because he knew what was coming. Dougie was, in the UN detail when he was very young, when his family immigrated to Canada. And his father told him and showed him the charter and said, "This, my son, is freedom. Read it, memorize it." And because they came from the wars. And so Doug, when he was 18, felt obligated to join the Army. And when he joined the Army, he was astute enough at 18 to wonder and ask why they were taking an oath to the Queen and not the people. At which time the sergeant just told him, "You don't have to take the oath, but then you won't be in the Army." So Doug went ahead and took the oath, and then he ended up in the UN detail and learned real quick what the United Nations Blue Helmets were all about. And so he felt obligated to go find out some more truth. And unfortunately, he got hooked up with the Oath Keepers. And the idea of the Oath Keepers is great. Only problem is they don't take an oath to the people. The oaths are always to the state. And so, and then when Doug found out that Jack McLam was a Mason, it kind of soured him a little bit. Now, Jack McLam at the end there, he was up there at Ruby Ridge, and he was totally disgusted by what went on up there. And in the end, he ended up, before he died, him and his wife were living in an old trailer up in the hills somewhere. So he certainly didn't get rich off what he was doing. So possibly Jack McLam, even though he was a Mason, may have seen the error in his ways and decided to try to whistleblow or something, and ended up very poor, very broke, and now he's very dead. But I found it was a very interesting conversation to have with this guy out of Toronto, because Toronto is so multicultural down there. But he is of the same opinion I am. We are in a psychological, spiritual war. and we better pick a side. It's that simple. He agrees we're supposed to win, which I keep saying we will win because we're supposed to. Do we need violence? No. But we need to raise the level of awareness for the people around us. And I know it's difficult. But he also agrees with the statement from Rockefeller about their window of opportunity beginning to close, which was stated way back in 1999. And he agrees that just started a quicker movement. Not this very, very tiny, slow, incremental movement that you don't even see. It's like watching paint dry. That they're being forced to move faster, which means they negatively impact more and more people. And at some point, the people can no longer ignore it. Then they have to ask questions. And I do believe that's the stage we're at now. People are very much beginning to ask questions of people that would never have asked these kind of questions before. So it's important that we keep talking, teaching, and shining the light. We got to keep doing that. I know a lot of people are very tired now. They're very frustrated now. They've been at this a very long time, extremely long time. I've been at this steady for 10 years now. And, I did a bit of this in the past, but I didn't have the knowledge I do now, that's for sure. But you get tired. You're getting beat up by the system because they don't want you talking. It's very difficult to make a living. And they've got my driver's license now. Not my driver's license, they took the Queen's driver's license, but whatever. And so they try to keep shutting you down. It's called the old submission game, right? And a lot of people are very, very tired at this stage. That's what happened to Doug. He worked just like a dog for years. And he said, I'm telling these people the truth and they're throwing rocks at me. What the hell's going on? So he's kind of backed out of it. He's still doing his research in that, but he's pretty much backed out of it now. And I told him, just keep doing your research because you're going to have to come forward again because the people are going to want to know what you know in the not too distant future. So if you are one of those who are getting discouraged, and the reason I brought that up is that I spent the other day talking to several people who have worked extremely hard for a number of years, and they're not seeing what they're hoping to see or what they expected to see. And this is one of the problems with truth. Once people have truth and they feel that, geez, I know the truth, that they will go out and explain the truth to their friends, neighbors, and family, and their family will embrace the truth. And they find out the exact opposite happens. And it boggles their mind. I brought you the truth and you don't want to hear it. So that's hard on people because it separates people in their families, their friends, everything else, and people get tired. And so, don't get tired. I probably sound tired today, and I am. But we can't back down out of this, okay? Those who know must never back down. Those who know should never quit. Okay? We got a big job to get done here, and we will get it done. More and more good people are coming forward all the time. More people who are embracing the truth finally are coming forward. So those who have been at this a long time, who are able to explain things to people quickly, don't give up. Okay, your long hours and all the garbage you put up with is going to show up to have been worth it. Okay, I'm just going. What time we got here? We got a bit of time. Somebody wants to get in on this or whatever, you can pick up a telephone. What's the phone number here? You can call 718-717-8296 if you got something you want to input on here or something else for the next 20 minutes or whatever. In the meantime, I am going to just simply go through this Democratic World Federalist and see what they got to have to say. There are four main paths that people have been traveling in an attempt to create a world federation. Each attempt has its founders, unique history, organizations, and people currently working on. In addition, there are several other movements, such as the World Citizens Movement, that are not working specifically on world government, but are preparing and educating world citizens for its happening. Okay, so that's one of the other indoctrination processes. Also, catastrophic events such as wars, environmental disasters, and natural disasters often play a part in pushing the countries and regions of the world to work together. Okay, so the more problems we got, and that goes back to the good old order out of chaos. And all of this chaos is being created in order to confuse, to fear people, and so on and so forth, into looking somewhere for safety. And the guys that created all the chaos are bringing you all the stuff that will fix the problems that you're afraid of. Problem, reaction, solution. Transform the United Nations. Can fundamental changes in the UN lead to a world federation? The most commonly discussed path for creating a world federation is through transforming the United Nations. This should come as little surprise, since the primary goals of the UN are to promote a peaceful, just, and sustainable world, goals that are shared by supporters of world federation. Among UN reformers, there are two main strategies for achieving a world federation: those who seek a direct approach to UN charter review, and those who promote a more gradual approach, beginning with the creation of the UN Parliamentary Assembly. That's the UNPA, of which our Prime Minister in Canada is a member, of which there are members of all political parties. And again, like I said, a great number of senators, professors from the universities, NGOs like Suzuki, and so on and so forth. Okay, so a more gradual approach, beginning with the creation of the United Nations Parliamentary Assembly. Integrate the regions. Can different regional federations form first and then unite into a world federal government? There are currently several regional alliances in different states of development. The European Union is perhaps the best known. Okay, that's regionalization. That's what's taking place in America and Canada and Australia right now. Okay. The townships, the villages, and the bigger towns are all being amalgamated into bigger municipalities, and centralized this, centralized that, and the people have no voice. Okay, it's just a huge bureaucratic pile of crap, taking away the voice of the people. And I'm glad to see in here that it mentions that the EU is the first of these things. Okay. Perhaps the best known, the European Union is perhaps the best known, but others include the African Union, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, the League of Arab States, the Organization of American States, and the Union of South American Nations. Some argue that the best path to a global federation is to build strong regional federations first, then unite them on a global level. Okay? And, that's kind of old news to a lot of people, but it's brand new news to a hell of a lot more people. So, Okay, so unite the democracies. Can existing democratic nations join together to form a world government? Some have proposed that the World Federation can be achieved by first uniting democratic nations around the globe. Over time, as non-democratic nations see the benefits, they will become more democratic and join the Union. This will continue until a true World Federation is achieved, allowing a step-by-step evolution process following a similar strategy to that of Jean Monnet, and his collaborators aiming towards European Federation. So, you have your leaders, when they're bombing the snot out of these countries, what did they say they're doing? They're spreading democracy, okay? These are countries that want nothing to do with this world federation or world government. Okay, like Libya, like Iraq, and so on and so forth. And so again, as Warburg said, either you're going to consent to this or we'll get you through conquest. So, they have these spring movements, they call them, the Arab Spring and whatnot. And we'll just go in and bomb the shit out of you. Because we're not democratic. So we're going to make you democratic, whether you like it or not. And it's really funny to see, presidents in the United States and other speakers in the United States saying we're spreading democracy. Why don't you spread republicanism? Because isn't America a republic? That's my understanding, is that America was founded as a republic. We have given you a republic. So now we have the leaders of the United States or America saying they're out busy spreading democracy. And nobody seems to take notice of it. You get the talking heads on the TV, we're spreading democracy. But wouldn't the talking heads in the newsroom say, well, I thought we were a republic? This is how propaganda works. It's you're being hypnotized. Hypnosis through suggestion. Okay, so once we unite the democracies, then we create a world constitution. For the first time in history, all of the people will have a voice, meaning none of the people will have a voice. Establishing a democratic world federal government by means of a modern world constitution binds the nations and the people of the world in a more cooperative and stable relationship that is provided by the United Nations Charter. In a modern world constitution means that for the first time in history, we the people would have democratic voice in resolving world problems. There would be enforceable world law, and the new governing structure could provide the alternatives needed to resolve global problems peacefully. Related activities, education, raising consciousness, expanded educational programs, consciousness raising, and improved self-awareness will replace the psychological factors that cause irrational opposition to world union. So if you're against a world government, you have irrational thinking, and then we will have hospitals and re-education programs to take care of that, to make sure that you're okay with it. Education teaches what is needed to achieve a successful world federation, explains constitutional principles, cooperation rather than the law of the jungle is primary, and is enforceable world law as a peaceful alternative to war. Consciousness raising means understanding ourselves better through a new awareness. Love of country expands to concern and care for the world, to world citizenship. Finding inner peace helps us. Wars and disasters. Must world war or other disaster strike first before the world will unite? There are many people who, in their underlying despair, believe that the world will never achieve peaceful union until the world first suffers an apocalyptic catastrophe, such as another world war. Others say that only an extremely dangerous threat or enemy to the world can motivate the nations and peoples into joining together in a world union. Did you hear that? Others say that only an extremely dangerous threat or enemy to the world can motivate the nations and peoples into joining together in a world union. This is the same lingo that went into World War I, or came out of World War I with the League of Nations, the Second World War with the United Nations and Israel. Never forget, those two things were created from the war. That's why the war was to create those two entities. And so they are threatening you, and that goes again back to Warburg. We're either going to have a world government through consent or through conquest. And if you won't bow down to us, then, well, geez, we may have to have an apocalyptic catastrophe or another world war. So extremely dangerous a threat or enemy that the world will be motivated and the nations and people will join together in a world union through fear. These feelings of despair cause many people to fail to take constructive action, believing that there is nothing they or anyone can do to save the world. Horrible disasters must occur first. And they're working on horrible disasters as I speak, okay? They're spraying your frickin' skies every day. I haven't had time to look into it any depth. I know there's supposedly barium in these chemtrails, and I see stories about aluminum, and I see Monsanto creating aluminum-resistant seed, and so on and so forth, okay? They say, these lunatics, these psychopaths, say that, a perfect world population would be around 500 million to a million. Or 500 million to a billion, unless we live under the conditions of Bangladeshis, at which 2 million people could be on the planet, calling 7 billion people. So if you go back to living pretty poor, we still got to get rid of 5 billion of it. That's the catastrophe they're talking about. They're bringing it about through assisted suicide, through abortion, through sterilization with vaccinations, through early death caused by vaccinations, poison food, poison water, poison air, all designed to shorten your lifespan. And these are the guys that want you and I to submit to a world government. The sad part is every body of so-called government in your nation, and I don't give a damn what nation you're in, is up to their eyeballs promoting this stuff, working in the background, ex-politicians, ex-lawyers, ex-bank, everybody's working on it in the background to put it into place. To destroy your nations, to destroy your futures, to destroy the futures of your children, your grandchildren, and those not yet born yet. And we still have people out there going, vote Bernie, vote Trump. I mean, give me a frickin' break. Or as Carlin would say, most of the people just remain willfully ignorant. So far, so good. But they are waking up. Been a long, long haul, but they are beginning to wake up. And all of those who have worked so hard for so long to gain knowledge in that must not get tired, must continue to put one foot in front of the other, must continue to talk to people. And then we're going to take it back. Okay, for the first time, we, the people, are going to run this planet, not these lunatics. We don't want nothing to do with these guys. But you just what I was reading today, you look at how many of these meetings, this is just in the World Federalist Organizations, how many of these meetings are held in Chicago and California and Ottawa and Vancouver and all over the place. That's inside our nations. Okay? And I mean, I just love, I am absolutely amazed that in 42 BC, Cicero was wise enough to explain to us how it operates. It's an inside job. A nation can survive its fools and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within. An enemy at the gates is less formidable, for he is known, and he carries his banners openly. And you can say, the British are coming because, they're coming. You can beat them back. Unfortunately, what's from inside, you don't notice what's going on. Anyways, an enemy at the gates is less formidable, for he is known and he carries his banners openly. But the traitor moves among those within the gates freely. His sly whispers rustling through all the alleys, heard in the very halls of government itself. For the traitor appears not traitor. He speaks in the accents familiar to his victims, and he wears their face and their garments. And he appeals to the baseness that lies deep in the hearts of all men. He rots the soul of a nation. He works secretly and unknown in the night to undermine the pillars of a city. He infects the body politic so that it can no longer resist. A murderer is less to be feared. Now, that's pretty obvious stuff, pretty deep stuff from 42 BC. This is 2016 AD. And the vast majority of the population still doesn't seem to get much. And that's got to change. I want to thank those who listen to this show because you guys have a duty. And gals have a duty. And we have to get in the faces of those who have deceived us, who threaten us, who are taking away everything we understand. We have to go and get in their faces. And I'm not talking about getting in the prime minister or the president's face. They're really not that important because they're never going to change their ways. But down at the local level, your town city council, they're all pushing this international stuff. They're all pushing world government. They are the ones that need to be held accountable. Those people you can get in their faces. Okay, start taking their pictures and put it breach of trust, treason up on your tack boards around town or on your hydro poles. Put their phone number, put their home phone number on and phone these people up and ask them why they're doing what they're doing. And that they're going to be held accountable for the harm they're doing to the people they say they represent. Okay? Forget the petition, forget the protests. Anybody that's asking you to get involved in a protest is basically either brain dead or a player, a controller. Don't go near any of that stuff. It's a waste of time. But it is time that we center these people out. We need to make these people extremely uncomfortable. These people have been in the halls of government, just like Cicero said, getting away with this because we can't wrap our brain or take our mind to the point that these people could be doing something this evil to their fellow man. We'll get over that because they are. Go print a picture of your mayor. Start pounding that thing up on the poles. Get on the horn. Get to the local council meeting. Get on top of these people. Put up with no more of this shit. Center them out. Call them out. Make them run. make them nervous, and enlighten them, because I would think that an awful lot of these dorks that get elected in these local elections, although they're vetted, they're vetted, really don't understand what they're involved in. A lot of them, I think, they think that they are doing a very good job, and what they're doing, they should be praised for, because, well, if we don't do this, there'll be another catastrophic war. So, I mean, they're caught up in the propaganda as well, for the most part. There are some that know exactly what's going on, and those would be the city managers and the CAOs who are trained on how to implement this world agenda. And unlike your so-called elected officials, they are not elected. They were appointed, and when your next council changes, that CAO city manager will still be there waiting for the new group of school kids called the council to come in. So he, the principal, or she, the principal, can guide them, educate them, tell them what to believe, how to act, and how to get what the globalists want. So we need to make, a particular effort to out those at the local level. We have to make them uncomfortable. We have to get them to start thinking. You have to pound them with information. I mean, their email and their phone numbers are available to you. Start sending them information. Start explaining to them what they're doing is actually against the law, and that they will be held accountable for their actions. Because it's against the law to cause harm. And the very fact that they're implementing these world agendas on us without our knowledge is an intent to deceive, which is a breach. And they can be held accountable for it. And they must be held accountable for it. And we need to get in their faces about it. So enough of this. Forget all of this political jargon. I don't want to see it or hear it from anybody anymore. I don't give a damn about Trump. I don't give a damn about Bernie. I don't give a damn about Hillary Clinton. These people are all working against your best interests. Well, Trump's going to save us. I had somebody yesterday say that to me. Trump's going to save us. What are you, an idiot? I thought Ron Paul was going to save you. Well, yeah, it didn't work out. Now, Donald Trump's going to save you? Go look in the mirror. That's who's going to save you. Okay? That's who's going to save you. Quit looking for heroes that don't exist. You are responsible. Your neighbors are responsible. Your friend and family are responsible for the outcome of this thing, because it's you, your family, and your friends are going to be affected by this. And therefore, it's up to you, your family, and your friends to change it, which means you got to step forward. Anyways, I see it's 1:58. If I pissed anybody off today, well, I'm sorry. Wasn't my intent. But we got to get going here. We got to get moving. Anyways, I want to say that in 1 hour from now, Hal's going to be on with Behind the Woodshed, who I wish I had more time to listen to his shows. I really appreciate what the man does. So 3 o'clock, tune in if you can, and have a listen to Hal. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in here today. And next Sunday I have Michael Waltz coming on from Spain. So that will be an interesting show. Everybody take care. Have a great day. And we'll see you Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. Right here on CCY.TV. Take care. Have a great day. Bye. We are out of here.